What you are about to hear did not begin with an arrest. It began with a question being asked out loud, before anyone in power was ready to answer it. For several hours, a claim moved across political networks suggesting that a sitting president had been targeted in a U.S. operation. No confirmation followed. No evidence surfaced. The denial came quickly. But the timing was the detail that refused to settle. Because almost immediately, the claim stopped being about Venezuela. It became a reference point. In private briefings and public statements, comparisons began to appear, not as policy, but as possibility. If legitimacy can be challenged, if protection obligations are judged unmet, then what follows no longer depends on borders alone. At first, this looked like routine political noise, advocacy language, online commentary, the kind of rhetoric that circulates and fades. But one voice stood out, not for its volume, but for its access. Elias Gerasoulis, a US-based political lobbyist with a history of arranging meetings between pressure groups and American lawmakers, made the comparison explicit. Nigeria, he argued, should be treated the same way Venezuela was being discussed. He did not introduce new facts. He rearranged existing ones. Disputed elections, ongoing security operations, international reporting on religious violence. Each element was already known. What changed was the order, and the implication that these were no longer internal issues, but triggers. This is where the timeline stops making sense. Because Nigeria's government responded almost immediately, rejecting the claims and questioning Gerasoulis' motives. Officials described him as a partisan actor aligned with separatist interests. The rebuttal was firm, but it focused on intent, not impact. And impact was already spreading. In Washington, political language has shifted over the past year. Enforcement is now discussed alongside sanctions. Security cooperation is framed with conditions. Human rights assessments are increasingly linked to access, finance, and legitimacy. None of this signals action, but it narrows the margin for error. Here's the part rarely explained. These processes do not begin with announcements. They begin with repetition, with ideas tested in public before being considered in private. When a comparison is repeated often enough, it stops sounding hypothetical. If this feels familiar, it should. Similar sequences have played out before. Allegations reframed as thresholds, narratives established before verification. Pressure applied through financial exposure and diplomatic isolation long before any visible move. Inside Nigeria, the timing is sensitive. Security forces remain stretched, political alliances are unsettled, economic constraints limit diplomatic flexibility. In that environment, uncertainty itself becomes leverage. Supporters of external pressure describe it as accountability. Critics describe it as erosion. Both sides are reacting to the same shift. That influence now travels through informal networks as much as formal diplomacy. And this is where the real question emerges. If an unverified claim can reset expectations, shape international discussion, and redefine legitimacy before any decision is made, then who is actually setting the rules? And at what point does sovereignty stop being assumed and start being negotiated?